Hello, my name's Simon Parker. I'm the guest editor for Exhibition News, and I'm delighted today to have with me Kerry Prince, and Kerry's from Reed Exhibitions. Um, by way of background, Kerry went straight into events from university in New Zealand. She's been in the industry ever since. She's had a very global career, so she's had postings around the world, but also worked in different formats, so not just trade exhibitions, so one-to-ones, confexes, and conferences. She joined Reed in 2011 in the US and then moved to the UK 6 years ago. First, she ran the info security portfolio, so a very well-known global brand, and then took on another very well-known global brand, IBTM, the travel portfolio, and now has the responsibility for all UK B2B trade shows. So a big role. And a glutton for punishment has also taken on an AEO role. So I'm working with Kerry on the AEO Council and is involved obviously in our efforts to get the sector up and running. So welcome, Kerry. Lovely to speak to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, how are you? Are you good?
As good as can be expected.
Good.
Yes, as good as can be expected. Yeah.
Well, look, let's, if you don't mind, we'll go down sort of memory lane a little bit to start with, because I just think it's fascinating that, well, you obviously went straight into exhibitions, so that's quite a rarity. So sort of certainly by design rather than chance, a lot of people sort of stumble into it. And also in New Zealand, I know nothing about the New Zealand exhibition industry. Is it a big industry, and why did you choose it?
So, yes, so I, to some extent, I did stumble into it. I graduated university with like a degree in politics and philosophy, and some family members at the time were politicians in New Zealand, and so I thought I wanted to get into that area, and once I had looked at that, decided I did not. And at that point, I was doing political conferences. So wow. That's how I entered the industry. I joined a conference company and started doing public sector conferences in New Zealand. So healthcare, public services. And from there, I moved to Australia and did conferences in Australia. That's usually the first jump out of New Zealand.
Yeah.
And from there, I moved to the Americas, worked in San Francisco and Chicago, again, conferences. Then I moved to, I actually moved to Barbados.
Wow.
And ran, conferences and summits in North America from Barbados and a couple of European events. Then worked in Canada.
Did you choose the locations and then the job, or did you choose the job?
Do you know, I chose the job. What happened was, we sort of, when I started in San Francisco in the company, and then moved to Chicago to take on a bigger role. And then we moved all of our conference production and marketing to Barbados. So I did not choose that. That just happily fell into my lap.
Yeah. So, nice.
Yes. Yeah. So and then Canada, and then the US again, and that's where I joined Reed Exhibitions, and I worked on their one-to-one summits division in the US, and then the opportunity to transfer for info security, which is I love tech shows. I've always loved tech shows. Worked in a lot of tech, so that was a great opportunity.
So then a similar question to ask Simon last week, which is, having done those events in all those territories and obviously in different cultures, I mean, were there massive variances in the way that they operated, or is an event regardless of its geography?
There's always local variances. There are, but it's around people variances, and people are people, so it does tend to align with the cultural variances. But I would say 80% is an event is an event. We're human beings. We all like to get together. We all like to share information. We all like to talk. And I think that sort of unites all of the events around the world in that space.
So the Reed journey. So what attracted you to Reed? I mean, obviously a massive and well-regarded global business.
Yes, I did some contract work. I'd actually stopped working. I decided I was going to stop work And my husband and I moved to a small part of America, and I got bored within a month, I think, and decided that actually I couldn't stop working. It was going to drive me crazy. So I went and there was a little bit of contract work to do at Reed Exhibitions. And then as soon as I was able, I did the contract work for 3 days, and then I started working for Reed. I loved it, loved the culture. And and at the time it was in the one-to-ones, and that was the first time I'd really worked for an exhibition company. And I was fascinated between the differences between conferences and one-to-ones and exhibitions, and the different commercial models, and the strengths and weaknesses across all of them. So that's how I ended up at Reed.
Okay. And then UK info security again. I mean, that brand at that point was doing well, but you did some some stuff that I said earlier on that we nicked from you, which was some persona work. So really sort of delving into segmentation, I guess.
Yes. So the brand was doing well, but the growth trajectory was not aligned with the growth trajectory of that market. So
that market was going nuts. Yeah,
it was going crazy. And to me, good isn't the industry growth of your event industry. Good looks like how that industry is growing. So what we did was we said, what is the core value proposition here? And for me, it's all built upon who your customers are. And so we went down the path of you could choose a number of paths, but we chose personas, and more importantly, behavioral personas. And the reason we went with behavioral personas is, rather than it just being another segmenting marketing tool, what it does is it looks at your core audience and says, as people, who are these people? What are their core behaviors? What are the innate drivers in their personalities? And can you determine innate clusters? And the reason it's different from ordinary segmentation is oftentimes when you use traditional segmentation, you'll segment around industry, job title. But actually this said, what are their behaviors? So as people move from different job titles, and the classic one is always, Senior Steve as a senior IT expert. If you're doing that by job title, you'd say it was Chief Information Security Officer or Chief Security Architect. But actually, as individuals, as personas, one is Senior Steve and one is Techie Tarek. And you have to talk to those differently.
And did that get embedded, as sort of interested in how that manifested itself in how you changed your own behavior, I guess? Did it get embedded in the language of the team? And
absolutely. If you can, I mean, the names on the face of it sound silly, but it's a way of communicating with the team. We actually used it internally, the language, everything came around. What does that mean for Techie Tarek? How does that impact his value proposition? What's the commercial model for him? It shaped our value proposition. We built the value proposition based on the personas. We built the sales packages and plans based on the personas. We built new product, absolutely, based on the personas. And then actually took that work that we did on info security, and in IBTM, we actually added 7 behavior archetypes work into there. And then that became a very, very strong part of how we then took that forward in the sales message for IBTM as well.
I guess
we took it.
Go on.
Sorry, we took it out to customers as well. So it's a very powerful permission to speak if you take out their customers' customer information. And one of the things that we know more is, your customer better, Mr. Exhibitor. But we, over 500 events and 7 million people, know how people behave at shows better than you do. Allow us to help you and share that knowledge. And it becomes a real consultative sales process.
And it elevates that conversation, doesn't it? It takes it into different, it's not just a transactional conversation.
Absolutely not. No, absolutely not. And it becomes a really powerful data tool as well, because you can overlay different data. So you can look at your show floor. I mean, IBTM, we actually rearranged the show floor completely based on the personas of our customers, and working out because it's a meeting show, we could actually work out, the meetings people were missed based on personas, and we actually moved tech in the middle because it was the uniting part that everybody was doing.
Yeah. And I guess, the $64 million question is then, that's great. You obviously have a greater greater intelligence about the products and the markets in which you operate. But has it moved the dial? How do you measure the success of it?
Two ways. Ultimately, in revenue and show growth. And both of those shows, info security saw a massive increase in growth from that point. That has been great. We've been able to sustain that. IBTM too. So you could easily transfer it into, this is having an impact on the bottom line. But secondly, on your NPS. So the more you understand your customers, the more you can deliver value to them. The easier it is to see that reflected in your NPS scores.
And did you see that? You saw obviously big upswings in NPS for both visitors and exhibitors, I assume.
Yes, and they don't always go up completely in alignment. So sometimes you'll see a slightly pick up in exhibitor, and other times slightly pick up in attendee. But by and large, yeah, you can absolutely measure it.
Okay. So then moving on to, again, the travel portfolio, which is, for people that don't know, is a more meetings-based event. So it's a very curated experience, yes. And it's something, I was intrigued to hear that you've obviously been involved in conferences and all different business models, and I guess the summit or model or the meetings-based event has been heralded as being, a potential future for all events. That particularly now, ROI is better to measure. It's less by chance, it's more by design. Do you follow that philosophy, or do you think there's room for both?
There's absolutely room for both.
The more general, big blockbuster, and then the more summit model.
I think there's absolutely room for both. Serendipity plays a massive part. So interestingly, when I was running one-to-one summits, I was fortunate enough to run them across a number of industry sectors. And I did carry out quite a large project. I had a team whose sole job it was to follow up on the outcomes of those meetings and share that follow-up with both the exhibitor customer, or the solution provider we used to call them, and the attendees. And business from those meetings, we found that about 50% of the business that eventuated from those meetings came from the non-formal meetings, the serendipitous meetings that occurred around all of the networking functions. So I absolutely do. I think as technology gets better, our ability to bring people together that cannot identify each other will only improve. Yeah. And I think it makes sense that we do that as much as we possibly can. And people are expecting it these days. We see it in other walks of our life, don't we? So I think it's something that we absolutely should be focusing on and spending quite a lot of time and attention on how we take it forward. But at the same time, I don't think it's ever going to replace the serendipity.
No, and it would be a shame, because I think that's one of the the secret sources of our business, isn't it? Really, and if you design that out, then you design a big sort of attraction to what we do.
Yes. And we've seen it in you see it on different show floors, where sometimes there's the desire to build pavilions or sections around a topic. Yeah. And actually people are missing out if they just flock to that area versus actually having to find it.
Discover.
Just exactly explore and discover.
Indeed. Yep. So then moving on to the new job. So congratulations, that's a big job. How was that? I mean, it's a bit of a stupid question because it's been a pretty rough year for everybody, but how has the last 12 months been within Reed?
I think it's been tough. I think it's been tough for everybody. It's nobody could have anticipated this happening, and it's been particularly hard on our industry, as you know, and I think it's particularly hard on the teams and the morale. I think we all of us get a huge amount of passion, joy, and enthusiasm from attending our events and seeing the value that they deliver to our customers. And not having that opportunity over the last year is taking a toll on the people in our teams.
Yeah, I had a conversation yesterday with somebody that said, you're effectively taking away what motivates us all and what gives us all energy, which is that, organizing, bringing people together. And if we can't do that, we are really frustrated, and it's horrible.
Yes.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
And how have you, that morale thing is something I've been talking to a lot of people about, and how have you managed to maintain that or within Reed?
Yeah, so I mean I am very much I'm a very much is that I'm the glass is half full person. I always have been, and I see that there's tremendous opportunities, and there's going to be tremendous disruption in all industries, and we can play a really important role in that process of helping businesses recover.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, we're definitely pushing that message. I think the other thing that, the silver lining, if you want to say, is, there's always been this, the burning platform was always going to be the digital world is going to slowly and surreptitiously overtake the physical event environment. And I think this is just, over this last year, has been massive confirmation, not just by us who always think it should be that way, but actually by the industries that we serve, very much sending that message back to us. So that's put that question to bed, I think.
Yeah.
And that's got to be positive. A lot of cheerleading, it's talking to the teams every day and saying, we can do this. We can get through this process. We help people. We're not going to stop helping businesses and individuals grow their businesses. So how do we start focusing on making sure that when the industry starts to open, we are there driving that recovery for them.
Yeah.
And very much the other thing I've been trying to send the message across is focus on what you can fix.
Yeah.
All of these things are happening around us, and to some extent, we can influence them through the AEO, and we can do our best to try and make that environment more positive for us. But at the end of the day, you'll get joy and sense of achievement from the things that you fixed. So be flexible, be agile. Don't bank on how this is going to turn out. Bank on being able to support your customers anyway on how this is going to turn out. And so that's the message.
Yeah, and your innate positivity is obviously going to help you, which then is infectious, hopefully, for the business. But presumably you're optimistic about the future for face-to-face. But I guess what you were saying is in combination with that digital, so the overhyped sort of omni-channel or hybrid event, and where do you sit on that?
So I think that there is absolutely room in the market for digital interactions. I think, we're foolish to assume that business only happens at shows. It happens throughout the year. So how can we take our attitude of helping people do business through the 365?
Yeah.
So I do endorse it. I just think we, rather than create a physical event, try and find different ways of supporting those industries through different models. And I think, we went through the flurry at the beginning of everybody trying to replicate a physical event.
Virtual event.
In the virtual environment. And there's been more success in different shows. I think it's absolutely same as events. It's horses for courses. We don't have one type of physical event. We can't possibly expect to have one type of digital solution.
Yeah.
So it is about, it's going back to the core things, the persona types. Have you got an offering that suits those individuals, their core value proposition and their core need? And if you don't do it. Don't do it to, it's a little bit like, when the World Wide Web became a thing and CEOs went back to companies and said, we need to have a website. We don't know what it does, but we need to have one. I think we have to be very cautious that we're making sure that we deliver value through that process.
Yeah. And then, you've now got this amazing business to run. We're seeing some, sort of positivity, some glimmers of hope. What are your sort of immediate priorities?
The immediate priorities are run some events.
Yeah, that's a good one. Get started.
Yeah,
get back out
get
there.
Started.
Yeah,
exactly. And it sounds really simple, but it's run events. The first opportunity that we have to be leading and showing that we can run events in the market. And I think that a lot of our industries are there's a lot of trepidation about getting back out, particularly international travel and those things. But we have to be saying and putting forward that we're creating safe environments for people to come back to. The majority of our events are made up of those small to medium-sized enterprises, and they need us. And I feel almost an obligation to make sure that we're driving that startup again, and bringing customers in. We're fortunate at Reed that we're part of a global business, so we've seen international events in Russia, Turkey. We had events in the US last couple of weeks, and the feedback that we're getting from the exhibitors and the visitors that turn up is hugely positive.
Yeah.
There are definitely glimmers of light coming through the clouds, and we just have to make sure that we're pushing through.
And when do you think so obviously notwithstanding government and June 21 and everything else, when's your first opportunity to run a show in the UK?
Our first opportunity is InfoSec is in July.
Yeah.
And we're running InfoSec in July.
Okay. Look, well, good luck with that. And it's been absolutely fascinating. I could speak all day, but sadly our time has run up. But I really appreciate your time. Good luck with everything. You certainly have all of our best wishes and support for all of those efforts. And let's get this industry back up and running so that we can all run events. But thank you, Kerry Prince.